So what do we want to talk about? We at Instruxi, we're architects. We've been at interoperability for a very long time. It's kind of how we think about things. So we think a lot about architecture. So the first, kind of some key takeaways before we kind of get into this is really when you think about Chainlink and you think about architecture, think of Chainlink as Lego blocks. You can be really imaginative about what you do and what you build with their kit. So we as Instruxi, we're not only build partners, we're also authorized resellers. Now you'll find us downstairs. We've got a booth. We're here with a federation that we help co-found called the Real World Asset Federation. The idea behind the Real World Asset Federation is a consortium of companies that are tired of being rugged, defining what is an asset, how is it governed and managed, and what can we do with it on chain. So effectively, if you're part of the Real World Asset Federation and you follow the procedures, we'll recognize your asset in our collateralization framework, and we support each other, and we make sure that it's actually quality that we're bringing on chain. One of the ways that we do this, and one of the problems that we've seen, we've all been in this for a very long time, is that blockchains are isolated systems that the data that supports the asset actually does not sit on a blockchain. It sits in a treasury management system, on a general ledger, on a sub ledger. It is somewhere in the ecosystem that is not associated with the on-chain activity. The token is a synthetic. We know this, unless it's Bitcoin. But for the most time with RWAs, the token sits off-chain, the data about the token. So we've got to bind the on and the off-chain worlds in a completely verifiable way so that one represents the other. So how do we do that? Well, we've got to bridge the gap, which means we've got to bridge the data, and we've got to do it in a verifiable way. So there are two platforms that we bring together to do this. Instruxi, we have our own products with uBuild, which is a legacy system integration framework. We've got to communicate in a verifiable and trust minimized way to the legacy ERP systems where the data is stored. The object stores with a document that says this asset is real. The independent price feeds, the mechanism for multi-attestation to say that the asset hasn't been rehypothecated. It's an entire framework. We have an enforcer, which is an on-chain governance and policy engine. So what that does is say, who are you and what can you do and what do you have access to in a verifiable way to bridge Web 2 and Web 3. It shouldn't be two ecosystems that we pass one from the other. They should operate as one ecosystem. This is what we mean by the golden thread. TrustSync is a managed proof of reserves. So we use CRE to proxy a proof of reserves, and we have an attestation, a multi-signing attestation that makes it Genius compliant. These are things that augment the Chainlink products. So I'm going to show you an example that uses the Chainlink runtime. And we're going live with a couple of clients with runtime very soon, and CCIP for cross-chain interoperability. This presentation is more about how do you think about joining the two worlds together. We've got to be thinking about hybrid architecture at least for the next 10 years, because the data that supports the asset doesn't live in the asset. So as I've mentioned, we've got uBuild as the integration fabric, we've got the enforcer as the governance layer, and we've got TrustSync that links the world together in a multi-attestation framework. So what is the golden thread? The enterprise database has the asset. So we use the uBuild API to facilitate the data interoperability, the connections. We have sign-in with Ethereum over several databases. We try and create a verifiable frame between the data, whether it's an object store or a legacy ERP or a system that verifies the data, but we've got to keep that on at all times. So just saying on a monthly basis that this asset is real, this is the amount, is not sufficient, even though we recognize that the Genius Act requires a monthly attestation, independent attestation for stablecoins. We believe that should be a golden thread. This should be live. You should know that your token is backed by assets on a continuous basis. So the first thing is the data. The CRE acts as the workflow to proxy the or to run the workflow, create the jobs, to proxy the proof of reserves. So we're able to pass that information directly to the DONs. And then the way that we do that is we have created a multi-signing event whereby obviously the administrator, the number that we receive, that we pass on to the DONs has to be signed by an independent third-party person. Again, going back to the Genius Act compliance, there has to be some kind of monthly, at least monthly attestation, independent attestation that the asset is the asset. We believe that could be further enhanced through continuous live monitoring. We proxy space and time. We've been partners with space and time storage for a very very long time. So we proxy those. So through the ecosystem, you can be running live reports on the asset status, asset liquidity, etc. What is going on? Again, building the golden thread end to end, cross-chain mobility through CCIP. The objective is that if you hold the token, you should see that the asset is backed and real, is verifiable, resilient, governed, compliant, and composable and interoperable. So going back to the Real World Asset Federation downstairs, come talk to us. We don't let your asset on unless it's on a balance sheet, independently verified, not rehypothecated, and that we can tie the data that proves the asset is real to the token on chain for confidence. Now, when we built the golden thread, you can collateralize, you can trade. It changes the game. And so the message is, when you think about architecting, it doesn't matter really if it's an asset, if it's an ID, if it's a policy that says you can do this, if it's a query, create a verifiable thread between the two ecosystems and have them operate as one ecosystem, governed as one ecosystem. And that's really the message. To use Chainlink, to think about how to architecture, and let's share some ideas. This is one idea of how we create a golden thread. We're doing another for US healthcare, where medical records have a golden thread between the data and the patient and the doctor for providing authorization for sharing information. It's the same golden thread. It's federated querying, it's fragmented information governed by blockchain and Chainlink. Make sense? Nice one. Nice to meet you all.